Imagine a living, breathing Star Wars game where you could carve out your own corner of the galaxy, build a cantina on Tatooine's dunes, run a repair shop on Corellia's docks, or quietly become a Jedi nobody expected. Imagine a Star Wars game where the villains weren't just scripted bosses, but players you'd see in the market every day. For a few incredible years, that game existed. It was messy, ambitious, and honestly one of the most authentically Star Wars experiences the franchise has ever seen. That game was Star Wars Galaxies, and its rise and fall tells you everything about how powerful sandboxes can truly be, and how fast they can die when companies forget who they're building them for. This is the story of the Star Wars game Time Forgot. Star Wars Galaxies launched in 2003 as a collaboration between LucasArts and Sony Online Entertainment. MMOs at the time were dominated by EverQuest and Ultima Online. The idea of creating a fully persistent Star Wars galaxy, one that players could literally shape, was borderline reckless. But that was the point. Rather than crafting a linear story or a scripted hero's journey, the developers wanted a world where the community was the narrative engine for the game. Right from the start, Star Wars Galaxies felt like a true extension of the original trilogy. The game prioritised the sense of place, dusty Tatooine towns, expansive Naboo wetlands, and bustling Corellian cities. These weren't levels you passed through, they were your home. Players didn't drop into an instance, complete a quest, and then teleport back into their void. They lived in the world. They built lives there. And this permanence made every decision matter in a way that MMO players weren't used to. The game's underlying design pushed this even further. Instead of forcing players into rigid classes, Star Wars Galaxies used a deep, flexible skill-based system. Your class was whatever combination of skills you decided to master. If you wanted to be a bounty hunter who ran a black market weapon shop, the game let you. If you wanted to be a dancer who also happened to moonlight as a starship engineer, go for it. This fluidity wasn't just a feature, it was the foundation of the game's identity. It created a community where no two characters were identical and where your role in the world emerged naturally over time. One of the most groundbreaking features in Star Wars Galaxies was its housing system. Instead of placing homes in predetermined districts or instanced plots, the game let players build their houses almost anywhere on a planet's surface. You'd buy a deed, scout for a beautiful vista or a strategic trade route, and drop your home right into the persistent landscape. Entire towns formed organically this way. Some planets had sprawling player-made cities with mayors, zoning laws, taxes, shuttleports, businesses, and political drama. Others had tiny camps on remote dunes where smugglers or roleplayers built their homes away from prying eyes. The result was a galaxy that genuinely evolved based on player activity. Equally important was the player-driven economy. Where modern games give you loot drops or vendor gear, Star Wars Galaxies built its entire ecosystem around player crafting. Weapons, armor, furniture, starship parts, food, almost everything that mattered was created by other players. Resources spawned with varying qualities. Top-tier crafters spent hours hunting for the perfect materials, experimenting with schematics, and building reputations that transcended servers. Some crafters became legendary. The best blacksmith on the server wasn't an NPC, it was a person you might see walking out of a cantina. Social systems emerged effortlessly from this structure. Cantinas became hubs where entertainers healed battle fatigue, musicians performed sets, and roleplayers staged in-universe events. Guild halls were centres of strategy and politics. Markets bustled with vendors selling unique goods. Even the lightest interaction had weight because the world was persistent and everything was player created. If a crafter closed their shop, the economy felt it. If a guild built a new town, it became part of the landscape forever. Then there was the Jedi system, still one of the most famous and controversial mechanics in MMO history. When Star Wars Galaxies launched, becoming a Jedi wasn't a button you pressed or a class you chose. It was a rare, mysterious path that required a combination of hidden triggers, dedication, and pure luck. Jedi were so scarce that seeing one was an event. They had to hide or risk permadeath. Their existence was a social myth, a whisper on a server. The community treated them as legends, not as baseline expectation. It's difficult to overstate how magical that felt at the time, especially compared to future Star Wars games. As the game expanded, so did its systems. The Jump to Lightspeed expansion added full spaceflight, dogfighting, and capital ships, opening an entirely new layer of gameplay. Shipwrights, another crafting profession, became essential to the galactic economy. Pilots formed squadrons. Space became its own ecosystem that fed back into the planets below. It was never perfect, but it was bold, ambitious, and deeply interconnected. For a few golden years, Star Wars Galaxies thrived on its complexity and its experimental spirit, but its strength, its messy, player-driven systems became its vulnerability. As the MMO market shifted and competitors grew stronger, particularly with the meteoric rise of World of Warcraft, Sony felt pressure to simplify Star Wars Galaxies and broaden its appeal. This led to a series of drastic combat revamps culminating in the infamous New Game Enhancements, or NGE. This update didn't just tweak, balance, or fix bugs, it rewrote the identity of the game. The fluid skill system was removed in favour of rigid classes, and entire professions vanished. Crafting lost depth, social roles lost status, the rare and mysterious Jedi path was replaced by a simplified, straightforward process in which becoming a Jedi was something anyone could do without the mystique or risk that once made it meaningful. Players were furious. For many, this wasn't a patch, it was a betrayal. Communities that had built their identities around complex roles suddenly found themselves irrelevant. Entire guilds quit overnight. The world felt hollow, not because the graphics changed, but because the game's soul had been rewritten. The emotional impact of the NGE is hard to explain to people who didn't live through it. Star Wars Galaxies was a world that players helped shape. Many had spent months mastering rare professions, earning reputation, or chasing the dream of becoming a secret Jedi. And when Sony flipped the switch, all of that effort evaporated. It was like returning to your hometown and discovering every shop replaced by big corporate chains, every piece of history paved over, every landmark repurposed. The world still existed, but it wasn't yours anymore. And Star Wars Galaxy's pre-NGE community was built on fragile trust, the belief that your effort, creativity, and role in the society mattered. When Sony erased the systems that built it, it shattered that trust in a single day. From a business experience, the NGE expansion was an attempt to fix the game by making it more accessible. But from the perspective of the people who lived there, it was the day their homeworld died. Even without the new game enhancements, Star Wars Galaxies was facing increasing pressure. Operating a persistent MMO is expensive, and as subscription numbers declined, the cost of developing outweighed revenue. The shifting MMO landscape, the rise of World of Warcraft, and changing business priorities all made Star Wars Galaxies a difficult product to maintain. Eventually, the official servers closed, marking the end of an era. But what happened next proved how special the game truly was. Fans refused to let the galaxy die. Player-run emulators, legacy servers, and preservation projects resurrected the classic pre-NGE experience. These servers recreated everything once thought lost: the deep crafting, the emergent professions, the classic Jedi mastery, and the messy, beautiful systems that gave Star Wars Galaxies its soul. The success of these fan servers is proof that Star Wars Galaxies wasn't just a nostalgic memory, it was genuinely ahead of its time. Modern Star Wars games are breathtaking from a visual and cinematic standpoint. They offer polished combat, impeccable cutscenes, and blockbuster storytelling. But they often feel like amusement parks rather than living worlds. You're a tourist, not a citizen. A perfect example of this is Star Wars: The Old Republic. the MMO that many assumed would carry Star Wars Galaxies' torch. The Old Republic is undeniably impressive, it delivers rich stories, voice-acted quests, and a polished class system, but its structure is fundamentally different. It's a theme park MMO, not a sandbox. And in the Old Republic, you follow storylines crafted by developers, you choose from predefined classes, each with its own cinematic arc. Your choices exist within rails. When you finish a quest, the world doesn't change, not really. You don't build towns, you don't shape planets, and your home is an instance, not a place where other players stumble across. Even its economy revolves around gear drops and NPC vendors, not player-crafted ecosystems. Meanwhile, Star Wars Galaxies thrived precisely because it gave players structural power. You know, if a crafter quit, the galaxy felt it. If a guild built a city, it became part of the geography forever. And if a player became a Jedi, the entire server buzzed. The Old Republic delivers a polished personal story. Star Wars Galaxies delivered a messy but shared society. Modern Star Wars games, including the best ones, prioritize scripted cinematic moments. Star Wars Galaxies was unique in prioritizing emergent narrative. Modern games give you heroes, but Star Wars Galaxies gave you a world, even if you wanted to just live a mundane life in it. Star Wars Galaxies remains unforgettable because it trusted players. It treated the galaxy as a collaborative stage, not a movie set. The game gave players tools, housing, crafting, politics, and professions, and it let them create meaning for themselves. And that's why its death hurt so much. It didn't just shut down a game, it shut down a proper world where people lived in. But no matter how small, its legacy survives, not just in memory, but in the fans who rebuild it, who share stories of their cantinas and their towns, and who know that for a brief moment, Star Wars was more immersive than any modern title had managed to be.